So this video is going to be all about one of the most powerful tools that you have to create movement and interest in your tracks, which is automation. So the tutorial is going to contain a basic walkthrough for beginners, and it's also going to contain some workflow tips and some shortcuts for those of you that might already be using automation and want to speed up the process. So let's dive in. Hey, how's it going, guys? It's John Holt here with The Audio Journey, helping make music production accessible to all. And here on this channel, what I do is a variety of music production tutorials, mainly focused towards beginners and beyond. So if that's something that you might be interested in, then definitely consider subscribing. Now, if you've never heard of automation or you don't know how to do it, the first half of this tutorial is going to explain what it is, and I'm going to give you some examples from a track that I'm working on at the moment. The second half of the video is then going to explain where you should be using it, how to draw it in effectively, and I'm going to give you some of the workflow tips for working with automation that I've picked up over my time using Ableton. So if you are just interested in the second half of this tutorial, then pop down to the description because I've put some timestamps there for you so you can jump straight to that bit. So in a nutshell, automation is the process of making any control or dial move automatically throughout the song without you having to be there clicking and dragging it. And some examples of the things that you can automate include volume, pan, reverb and delay sends, and so much more. So let me give you some examples of automation from the track that I'm currently working on. It should start to make sense, and I think when you see this, you're going to be able to think back to tracks that you know and think, that's how he automated that or this. So let's jump in and have a look. Now, as is common in electronic music, I've got a snare roll building up to the drop. So I'm going to play that for you. And what I want you to specifically listen out for is how it builds up in volume and how it becomes clearer as it progresses. So have a listen and keep an ear out for those two things. There are three things that are happening to this snare roll. It simply gets louder, it also gets clearer, and then at the end, there's a little bit of a delay so that it doesn't stop too abruptly. So I'll play that little bit at the end because you might not have heard the delay over the other bits. So let me solo the snare roll so that you can hear that at the end. Just sort of fades out with a little bit of a delay. Now, the three things that I'm automating on this snare roll to make it sort of build up and have that impact that it does are the volume, the delay send, and the EQ high cut frequency. Now, don't worry if you don't understand what they mean. What I'm going to do is delete all of the automation on this track and do it again, and I'm going to demonstrate this and explain what I'm automating as I go along. So, the quickest way for me to delete all of the automation that's on this track is to right click here and do clear all envelopes. So that's what I'm going to do. Cool. So the way that you automate a parameter, and what I mean when I say parameter is volume, pan, EQ settings, all of those things that I just mentioned that I automated are parameters. The way that you do this is by selecting what you want to automate from the list in the arrangement view, and that's just over here. And you've got two sections. So you've got the device or section of Ableton that you're going to be controlling. So when we come to adjust the EQ, we're going to select the EQ, but for now, we're going to stick in the mixer because that's where we can access the volume and the delay send. Then you've got the parameter sort of list of the parameter that you want to control. So first of all, we're going to go to track volume. Now, I want the snare roll to build up from pretty much inaudible to the level that it's at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag over the snare roll, making sure that I don't have the pencil tool selected. Let's make sure that's off, and I'll come on to why that is a little bit later on. Make sure the pencil tool's off, everything's selected, and you hover just near the line, drag it all the way down to the bottom. And then I'm going to click here to get rid of this point. Again, all of this will be explained in a little bit more detail, and then I'm going to shelf it off up here. That's where I want it to get to about full volume. won't start it all the way down. We'll start it about there. And that should be good. Next thing, the EQ. So we want to automate one of the parameters or one of the controls in the EQ. So we're going to go to EQ. And now we have a list of all of the things inside the EQ that we can adjust. What I want to adjust is I basically want to make this happen. I want to make this EQ come up like this. So what we need to adjust for that is the frequency of band number 7, which is the one that we're using. So a really good tip as well is if you can't find what you want in the list, then just come and move it, and it's going to put that as the selected thing in the list. So if I wanted to adjust the gain coming out of the EQ, for example, click and drag the gain, and then the gain is the thing that's selected here. So that's a really easy way to find what you want to adjust. So we're going to go for frequency, and we basically want it to go from where it is now to being fully open. So again, click and drag all the way through, hover just over the line, and again, do this in much more detail a little bit later. But then we're going to click there, get rid of that point, and it's going to slope up nicely. So far, let's listen to what's going on. Maybe get this to open a bit quicker. So what we've done there is just made the low frequencies the only ones that are coming through to start with, but then gradually opened up the higher frequencies as the snare roll progresses, as well as bringing up the volume. Final thing that we want to do is back in the mixer, which is the delay send, which is the 8th note delay, which I've got set up as a send and return. And if I flip back into this view, essentially what I want to do is turn this up, because when I turn this up, what's happening is we're putting this delay onto the snare roll. And the reason that I want that to happen, as I mentioned, is because I don't want the snare roll to end really abruptly. I want it to fade out a little bit. So we've got 8th note delay selected. Going to select these last few hits, hover just over the line again, pick that up to about there. We don't want too much. We don't want to go all the way, but we want to be able to hear it. So we'll pop it about there. And see how that sounds. That's all right, maybe a tad more. I tend to be a bit heavy-handed with this kind of stuff, but that's fine. Now what I'm going to show you is a view of the mixer and the EQ so that you can see these things actually moving while that snare roll is happening. So you can sort of visualize it and hear it at the same time to hopefully click home as to what we're doing here. So what you're going to see is this filter come up, and you're also going to see the volume fader come up as well. And you're also going to see this flick up at the end, which is the delay send. So let's have a listen to that. This is opening up. This volume's gradually sneaking up. And then this delay will flick up at the end. There we go. So now that we know what automation is, what I'm going to show you is some really quick workflow tips and shortcuts to make sure that you're using this as quickly and effectively as possible, because there's nothing more frustrating than a slow workflow with this kind of stuff. So we want to be quick from the get-go. Now, firstly, as I alluded to earlier in the tutorial, I don't like using the pencil tool for automation. So the pencil tool, you could turn on up here or by pressing B on your keyboard. And I'll show you what that's going to do when you're drawing in automation. So if we wanted to go to volume, and I'm going to just clear this envelope by right-clicking here and doing clear envelope, which clears the track volume automation. If I wanted to do that track volume automation and I clicked and dragged up here like this, you can see that it's got these sort of weird steps, and that goes by whatever grid you've got set. And I like working with the grid in this formation, and this style of automation is going to sound really jolty and abrupt, and it's just quite annoying to work with. So for some people that might work really well, but I personally don't like working with automation in this manner. So if I undo that automation, zoom out a bit, if I get rid of the pencil tool, really easy way to do it. I'm going to go through this in more detail, but just sort of click and drag down like that. Get rid of that point, and that's a really nice smooth transition as opposed to the sort of jolty steps that we saw with the pencil tool. Next up, a dotted line here means that you've got no automation on this track, and this can sometimes throw you if you've got some random point just back here or something. There's no movement going on at all, but you can see that there is automation apparently on the track because it's a solid red line. A solid red line means there is automation. What you can do to get rid of that, just check that there's no automation earlier or later, and as I just did, right click, clear envelope, and then we've got this dotted line, which means that there's no automation data yet on that track. Now, just to get the last simple point out of the way, clicking on the line gives you an automation point that you can control and move around. Undo that. And then clicking on a point that already exists gets rid of it or deletes it. So now we're back to the dotted line. Now, when we're clearing envelopes, as I just was, by right-clicking on here, we've got a few different options. So clearing envelope gets rid of the track volume. So if I click something on here, we've got rid of the track volume automation. As you saw, I've got other automation in other areas of the snare roll, like the EQ. If I went to clear all envelopes of the mixer, I'm going to get rid of the 8th note delay, the delay send automation that we put in. And if I do clear all envelopes, that's going to get rid of the delay send automation and the EQ automation. So be careful when you're clearing envelopes. You don't want to clear a load of EQ or other automation that you spent a lot of time working on. Now, you've probably already picked up how I've been doing these sort of smooth transitions really quite quickly. But just to show you in real time, what I do is I make sure that the grid's on, which it probably always is. And then I click and drag over the section that I want to create a sort of a ramp up in. For example, this volume automation in the snare. Hover just over the line. So if you hover on the line, you're going to create a dot, and that's not what we want to do. But if you hover just over the line, you can click and drag up or down. I'm going to go all the way down. And then it's really powerful to be able to just click on one of these dots, get rid of them, and it creates a ramp really nice and quickly. So let's do that there. That is the quickest way. So if we're going from no automation, you can have a ramp up as quickly as this, which is, 5 seconds, incredibly quick. You can also use this if you want to create a sort of up and down effect, like a rise up and then a rise down after the drop. Let's do it on this one here. So the drop is here. You can see where the bass comes in. So let's say we wanted to bring the volume of this up as we come up to the drop and then fade it back out after the drop. We can see where the bass comes in. This is my drop here, but I want to fade this up in terms of volume and then back down after the drop. So let's highlight all of that, drag it up, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a point just in the middle here, around where the drop is, and then click on this one and click on this dot, and there we go. It's as simple as that. Ableton is really powerful for automation in this sense, is when you know how to do this kind of stuff, it can be really quick and easy to do. So next up, if these straight lines aren't really working for you, you want it to ramp a little bit slower at the start or a little bit slower at the end, then what you can do is you can hold down Option or Alt on your keyboard and then hover near the line, and you can see on my cursor, I've got that curvy line next to it. If I now click and drag, that's going to curve the line for me. And that allows you to really have some fine control over the speed of the parameter change on whatever you're automating, the volume, the EQ or whatever. And I do find myself doing quite a lot of this. You'd be surprised how often you listen to something and think, I just want it to be a little bit slower at the end, or I want it to fade out quicker, but still be going down nice and slowly. So the way to do that is just say, hold down Option, click and drag near the line. Now, if you've got something that's repeating in the track and you want to put a bit of automation on it, then you can copy and paste automation to make it really quick to work through. So the example I'll go with is I've got this vocal chop here. So if we play that.
This
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of delay on that last little vocal chop. So let's go to the mixer because that's where the delay send is. Let's go delay, highlight here, and click and drag that delay send up. And let's say I like how this sounds. So let's have a listen to that. Sounds pretty cool. Let's say I want to copy that to the rest of these, but I don't want to go and click and drag every single time. What you might be tempted to do to start with is do this and then Control or Command C. I don't recommend doing that. The reason being is two reasons. You're going to copy this MIDI clip, which in this instance, that is what we want. But if this was a vocal that was changing over time, you copy the actual MIDI data or the audio if it was an audio track. And we don't necessarily want to do that. We just want to copy this automation data. So what we're going to do is now that we've highlighted this section, which is the section that repeats, we can see that this section would then repeat here and carry on repeating. We're going to highlight this section here and we're going to do copy envelope. Then we can go Control V and that's going to copy that automation onto there for you. And then you can do this really quickly. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. So let's come back to the snare roll. And we've automated a few different things. Let's pop some of that volume automation back in just quickly. There we are. Let's say we wanted to be able to see all of the automation that's going on the snare roll at the same time instead of having to flick through these menus to see it every time. What we can do is right click here and do add lane for each automated envelope. Now let's click on that and see what it does. Cool. So we can see that down here, we can see the automation that we've done on the mixer. We can see the EQ automation that we've done, and we don't have to flick through these menus. If we right click again and do add another automation lane, the mixer track volume is going to come down there as well. You can add as many of these automation lanes as you want. I believe there might be a restriction. Obviously, it's going to get crowded, but you can add sort of a reasonable amount of these so that it's not clouding up the MIDI that you've got in the track, and you can see them all if you want to build up a few different things sort of at a similar pace and you want to visualize them all at the same time. This is a really good way to do that. You can get rid of them if you want to, or you can minimize them just like that. To save yourself a little bit of space, but that's a really cool trick to be able to see everything that's going on in terms of automation on your track. Now, another tip that I picked up from Sadowik, who has an awesome music production channel, definitely check that out if you haven't already. What he does is he puts plugins on his master fader like a reverb, and then I'll show you what he does. So let's come onto the master fader by clicking just down here, or if you're in the session view, you can click just here. It's going to do the same thing. And we want to be in the device view, which if this is what you're seeing, no clip selected, then come down to the device view. That's the same in the arrangement view. I've got a reverb loaded on here, which I just dragged over from reverb in here and then grabbed one of these. So I've got a reverb here. Let's go to a different point in the song. Now you can see that I've got a red square here, which means that I've automated the dry and wet knob. Now what the dry and wet knob does, if we use the example that my vocal is the sound that we're putting through this reverb, the dry sound would be my vocal without any reverb, and the wet sound would be just the reverb that's being added to my voice. So if we have this dry wet knob at 50%, you're hearing an equal amount of my voice, or the dry signal, and the reverb, which is the wet signal. If it's 100%, just hearing the reverb, 0% or completely dry, we're just hearing my vocal sound. In this case, it's the whole track because it's on the master fader. But what it's really cool to be able to do is flick up the automation for this master fader. And you can see what I've done here is I've turned on, I've automated the dry wet knob. So if we click this, which if you move something that's got automation on it, that is going to go gray as opposed to red. You can put the automation back on by clicking this button just up here. So now we're back to red. You can see that as we come into this final breakdown, I've automated the reverb to come up a little bit and then stay on at 25%, I believe. Yeah, at 25% throughout this build-up. I could also have this sort of ramping up a little bit towards the end if I wanted, doing that. And let's have a little listen as to how this builds up, and you can see it building up and hear it. Oops, let's unsolo that. There you go. On those last few drum hits, you did hear the reverb start to come in. There we go. So you could do that with any plugin. You could do that with a delay. But yeah, having plugins on the master fader with the dry wet knob being automated is a really quick way to just put reverb over the top of your whole track, or for a build up, things like that. Now, finally, something you might be wondering is, can I add automation to just a clip, like a MIDI clip or an audio clip, something like this? And the answer is yes. You're going to do that back over in the session view. So let's come over to the session view and let's go to one of these vocal chops. So let's come down to the clip view as opposed to the device view. And here we can see this vocal chop. Now, in order to automate something, just as we did in the other view, in order to automate something inside this clip, what we're going to do is click E for envelopes. And then just as we did in the other side, we're going to choose what we want to automate. So we're going to choose something from the mixer, and we're going to go for reverb. Let's put a little bit of reverb on this. Probably not what we want, but just to demonstrate. And then using the same sort of clicking and dragging techniques, we're going to add a little bit of reverb onto this last hit. Wow, there's quite a lot of reverb, but let's add that on and let's play that. You can see this. Because there's already a lot of reverb on the track, it's not really that noticeable. But what you can see is this send dial coming up. So let's play that one more time. There we go. You heard it a little bit on that last one. So you're able to do that with any of the plugins that you've got on the track. So if you've got a delay, you've got a reverb, you can automate that either in this clip automation. And then if I were to copy this clip and pop it into here, obviously it would be in the track normally, but let's just pop it in there. Oh, wrong track. Paste. And then let's have a look. Here we can see that automation that we put on the reverb. Now I'm 100% sure I will have missed out some tips that you can use for automation there. So if you have any tips that I didn't cover in this video, then please do leave them down in the comments for everyone else to see. Now, if you found this video helpful, please do leave a like. It really does mean a lot to me, and it lets me know what tutorials are working for you guys and where I can improve. If you know someone that uses Ableton and that might find this useful, then please do share it with them. By hitting that share button just down below, you can copy a link and send it to them on whatever social network you use. Really appreciate that as well. If there's anything else that you guys would want covering in this tutorial, then drop me a message using the links in the description below. And until next time, take care guys. Thank you for spending a bit of time with me. I hope to see you again soon.